I'm here in New York City. I'm in Brooklyn. We got Bob in New Jersey. We got Kiara in Atlanta, Emily in New York City, in the house. Oh my God, Brooklyn, Long Island, lots of New Yorks, Queens, Mississippi, DC, South Carolina, Long Island, New Jersey, Denver, Austin, Florida, Bianca's in Toronto, Mountain View, California, Chicago, all over the place. Awesome. All right, so LSAT-Flex obviously announced last night, and my past 24 hours have just been crazy trying to keep up with everything. I mean, I kind of feel like things were moving fast enough already with the digital LSAT and then with the whole COVID situation. And now LSAC is rolling out this new LSAT-Flex. So I feel like things are really moving a mile a minute, and thought it might make sense to, again, slow down a little bit, take a deep breath. Hopefully no one's in a hurry right now. I've got my tea here once again. It is a black tea with mint once again. I was kind of returning to something that's a little bit more comfortable because I'm feeling the need to get some comfort and de-stress, but I've also got something with caffeine because I've got to just keep churning along with this, trying to keep up with all the changes just as much as I imagine all of you are. I see Laura's got some tea too. What kind of tea are you drinking, Laura? Bob's drinking peppermint. Laura's drinking David's tea sweet tart. Delicious. Yes, David's tea is quite tasty. Lots of unique flavors there. So what I'm thinking is I'll do the same thing we did last time, Monday night. I'll bring in some of you all to chat with me on camera here. What's
Hi.
up, Laura? Hey, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining, Laura. So what's happening in your world?
Well, I was scheduled for the March exam, then got pushed to April, and now am set up for the LSAT-Flex. And I actually am excited about it. I think it's unheard of and really cool that I get this opportunity to even be a part of it and see how it goes. But I did call the LSAC this morning just to try to get as much information as possible, because my concern at this point is just how to go about prepping properly. So I asked them because I was actually interested in purchasing their exams for $99. And I wanted to know if the 3-section exam would be featured on that now that they're offering LSAT-Flex. And they said it wouldn't be, just because this is supposed to be a one-time thing, even though I think it can possibly go to June. But I was just wondering if you have any tips about that. Should I do a 5-section regular exam, or should I do single sections if I can get my hands on that online? I'm not really sure where to go from here.
That's a great question. So LSAC, they rolled out official LSAT Prep Plus, the digital LSAT subscription service, $99 a year. You get access to the vast majority of released LSATs in the digital LSAT format. As you said, there are 4 sections because that's how prep tests have always been published, the 4 scored sections. LSAT-Flex is 3 sections, 1 games, 1 reasoning, 1 reading comp. And if that's what you're taking on test day, if you're taking the now May LSAT as online LSAT-Flex, I would practice like game day, only do 3. So a simple solution would be remove or skip the logical reasoning section from any given published LSAT prep test. Then you've got 3 sections, 1 of each. Do them back to back.
Cool. I didn't think of that. So just when I'm like, let's say I start and then I get logic games first, and then let's say I get 2 logical reasonings back to back, I should just skip the second one of logical reasoning and then just go right to either reading comp or logic games and do it that way.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks. That's a great idea. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, of course. And then if you want to get a scaled score, you could just double your logical reasoning performance and then use that to convert your raw score into a converted score out of 180. It obviously wouldn't be perfect, in part because some logical reasoning sections have 25 questions, some have 26, you might occasionally have 24. So it won't be a perfect approximation, but it'll be close enough to give you a sense.
I see. So if I were to get 17 right that section, just double that, just to try to get a sense of where I'm scoring.
Yeah. It won't be perfect. Give yourself a margin of error of a couple of points on each end just to be safe. Don't get discouraged if one is lower than you feel like it should be. As always, take the average of the most recent 5 exams you've done in a relatively short period, and that will give you the best indication of where you stand.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
What's up, Jennifer? How you doing?
Hey guys.
What's up?
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
Stressful. I was originally planning on taking it in March, and then April, now in May. My question is, with the release date for the scores for the May Flex, will they be released sooner than the originally, like the 3 weeks that it takes? To see if someone wants to take it again in June?
Yeah. So it's going to be 2 weeks for the online LSAT-Flex. So slightly faster, but not by much. And that's in part because they still have to do all their detailed statistical analyses to make sure that people performed on test day as LSAC expected based on their previous calculations, internal difficulty ratings and such.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Yeah, of course. And just as a follow-up to that, a lot of law schools will be extending deadlines, if they haven't already, to wait for the May LSAT results to be released. And then they may extend beyond that for those taking June. If June doesn't happen in person and it happens online, they will probably push dates back even farther to account for that.
Okay, I see.
So don't worry about deadlines.
All right, thank you.
Especially not this cycle, of course. Thanks for joining. So
Hi.
what's going on?
Oh, not much. I figured I would since it's mostly northern people, I figured I'd represent the South since I'm South Carolina and there's nobody else below the Mason-Dixon line.
Awesome. How are things down there?
Well, our governor just put in that Shelter-in-Place Act yesterday.
Well, welcome to the club.
Thanks. I think only Arkansas in the South is the last state that's holding out for that. But it's from what I hear from my friends at the Citadel and the College of Charleston, where I went to school, it's hard to stay focused and motivated. I'm out of school. I've been a teacher for 3 years. I think the biggest thing is just ensuring that we can get into a school because so I live in South Carolina, but I plan to apply to South Carolina. I also plan to apply to Georgia, which is higher ranked. But Georgia does things very on their own. If you go to a college in Georgia, you have to take Georgia State history, or else you can't graduate or you can't transfer. And for the pass fail, they're it's Georgia, Emory, GSU, Atlanta, and the last one I can't think of right now. But they're having they're going to get grades between the 3.5 and 3.9. They're not getting a pass fail. So that's a lot of pressure from everyone I've talked to at Georgia who's a student who's okay, I have to literally this is my life on steroids. There's no, I'm going to pass. There's no, I need a number. So that's another stressful thing you've got going on down here.
Yeah, I hear it. So that's for undergrad too. So I've heard a lot about law schools going pass fail, and I think they should, given the circumstances overall. It's really a difficult time. But on the undergrad level as well, there are schools you're saying that are not going pass fail.
Nope. No, definitely not in Georgia. Not for law schools. Not for anything. And then medical schools, MUSC. I just went there because I got tested for COVID. I don't have it, by the way.
Congrats.
Thank you. I just have bronchitis and a sinus infection. But they're letting them graduate early, and they're right there in the trenches because we don't have enough doctors. The doctor that saw me, and I say saw me in quotations because when I say saw me, he was down the hall in a booth seeing me via video, and his PA was brand new, and the nurse she'd been there for a couple of years, but still this is affecting everyone and everything. I drove past Charleston School of Law, which, it's we'll skip that conversation.
Sure. This is stressful, by the way. Do you have any tea?
Yes, I have.
Good, let's drink some tea. Awesome.
Yeah, let's drink
black tea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're really drinking that. I'm going to have another sip to catch up.
Yeah, I also was in the Navy for 4 years. So, I was saying, about my quote about your earlier discussion about the LSAT being a good indicator of success. I agree with you. I think it is. I don't like sitting for 6 hours a day and studying, but I've seen my progress go up while I've been sick and I can't leave my room.
By the way, you don't have to study for 6 hours, especially not when you're sick.
Oh, no.
You have permission to slow it down.
No, that's just me being that's with breaks included.
Okay, good. You mentioned the the issue of some schools undergrad not going past fail.
Yeah.
And I just want you to know, as well as anyone else listening or watching this right now or later, is that schools, they'll understand what happened this semester. It's obvious to them. They're aware of the news. They're aware of the situation. And you can always write an addendum. If your GPA is not what you would have wanted it to be and they didn't go past fail and there's a big drop there, you can explain how coronavirus affected things for you this semester, or even just the transition to moving online. A lot of professors don't really know what they're doing with the whole online thing. And it's hard to stay engaged too, especially when you're quarantined and you have like maybe family issues, personal issues. So I would just encourage you and everyone else to keep that in mind. Don't worry too much about spring semester.
Good to know. Good to know. Definitely.
Do you have the LSAT in the near future in your plans?
I was scheduled for March, but that got canceled. So I'm planned for June. And just with like the way things are going, I've talked to like my friends who are nurses and doctors and scientists. They say that we probably won't get out of this until my birthday is when it's supposed to max out. Probably mid to late June. That's when things will get back to normal.
Another sip of tea.
More tea.
Yeah, no, that's quite a while. And so that would mean the June LSAT wasn't happening in person.
No.
And the LSAT-Flex is now the alternative to move things online to keep the ball rolling and keep law schools getting applications and LSAT scores, applicants getting LSAT scores to apply. So it needs to go forward. If the June 8th LSAT is canceled, which I almost certainly think it will be, you'll have a rescheduled option for the online LSAT-Flex. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing probably in late June. That's a guess. I don't know for certain. LSAC, we saw they didn't decide on the April LSAT till about 2 weeks prior. So June LSAT, they may hold out, wait and see, but I wouldn't count on it, especially since so many places have stay-at-home orders until June 10th already. And I can only imagine more will follow suit.
Yeah, I agree. And to tap onto Mr. Panthen's question, since I do have a military background, do you think that would add value to applications?
Totally. I mean, the skills that you have in the military, the skills that you demonstrate and develop in the military, conscientiousness, responsibility, leadership, discipline, hard work, all that stuff, they love to see that. To stick it out, to make it through, that says something already. So absolutely. And I would definitely mention that, definitely highlight it. Could be a great topic for a personal statement or diversity statement, addendum of some kind. So I definitely include that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
So when are you taking the LSAT?
I registered for April 25th. I changed it to June, but I changed it again to May Flex, the LSAT Flex. Yeah.
So how are you feeling about prepping for the May LSAT Flex?
I'm very happy with the Flex thing because the test center that I was going to was in a community college, which is like 30 minutes away. And I'm very sensitive to the environment because I'm allergic to dust severely. So I'm very happy that I could, actually take it at home with a familiar environment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of perks to it. If you have a quiet home environment, that could be a huge benefit. No distractions from the proctors, no distractions from other test takers. And it's only 3 sections, not 5. So you're done in 2 hours.
I love that because I lose my focus and concentration going forward. So that's it's really perfect for me. And my weak part was logical reasoning. So that's even better for me.
Yeah. Now the big open question is we don't know if logical reasoning's weighting or influence on the overall score will be reduced from 50% to 1/3 or 33%. That was the big question that students wanted answered in the LSAC webinar today. And I asked that question as well. It was the top voted question. They either didn't know how to answer it or didn't want to answer it. And so that still remains an unknown. Yep. So I'm not sure whether to tell somebody right now, emphasize logical reasoning just as much as previous or downplay its influence just a little bit. Hard to say right now, but hopefully they will answer that sometime within the next week. I'm hoping sooner rather than later.
Never taken a proctor exam in the past. So one concern what concerns me the most is my Wi-Fi connection that does get disconnected once in a while. What do you do then if it does get disconnected during the exam?
So LSAC's site links on the LSAC page about the new LSAT-Flex. They link to a page on the ProctorU website, which is the company administering the security end of things. And they say that if your connection fails, then they will save your work, they will pause it, and you will be able to reconnect and resume where you left off.
Oh, so you don't lose any time?
Correct. So,
okay.
So no reason to worry about that too much.
All right. That's good. All right. So my second question was, I'm applying for this fall 2020, and they accept application on a rolling basis, and I've confirmed that they will most likely be open if I apply like before June. But should I apply without my LSAT score, or should I wait till I get my score? I have everything else ready.
If you apply without an LSAT score at all, period, then they won't be able to evaluate your application until that LSAT score comes in. So if you have everything else ready, then I would say hold off and only hit submit once you get your score back, assuming you're happy with it, because you don't want to run the risk of them evaluating your application with a score that you don't want to apply with. It's possible that you might not do as well as you hope and you want to retake. So if that's the case, I would say get everything ready, write your personal statement, get your resume, letters of rec, all that, but don't actually hit submit on them until you've got the score you know you want to apply with, just to be on the safe side. Well, anything else on your mind for today?
Oh, that's it. That was super helpful. Thanks.
Hey, Dominique, what's going on?
Hi, how are you? Can you see me?
Yeah, you're good. What's happening?
Okay, so I have a question. I am planning on taking the November, October-ish LSAT. So I can't remember what score you got. So I'm trying to really get high because I'm trying to get scholarships to law school. So we have actually a group. One of my group members is on here to Alexis. So we have like this Zoom meeting that we study together and stuff. It's about 8 of us now. So my question to you is like, what do you advise us to do to like really boost our score? Like we have practice exams that we are taking timed. We just took a diagnostic the weekend before last. I'm just trying to get as high as I can. So you are where I want to be. So I just want to know what you did.
Awesome. Well, what I did was I made a lot of mistakes. I took every LSAT exam ever released up to that point. I did all the books I could. It took me an entire year. And a lot of it was slamming my head against the wall. Like it was a struggle. I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't really know how to study properly. And when I slowed down and changed my approach, rather than doing exam after exam and measuring myself, I did a couple of exams and really went over them in painstaking detail. Like I looked up every word I wasn't sure about, every abstract, formal logic-y phrase. I figured out what all those meant. And then I went deeper and looked to see what traps the test makers were laying for me. And I unraveled them and spotted them and understood them bit by bit. That's what made the difference. So you've got exams, you're taking them timed. That's great. But I would say whatever you're doing, try to cut that in half, cut the quantity in half, and double the quality.
You said a year. So how many, say in a given day, how many hours would you study for the LSAT? Well, because I work full time, so it's kind of hard. I study now about, since I'm working from home, about maybe like an hour and a half to 2 hours, 5 days a week. So
that's fine. If you're going for November, that's totally fine. You've got over 7 months.
Yeah. Okay.
When I was doing things the right way, I was doing 3 to 4 hours. When I was doing things the wrong way, it was either 0 or closer to 6 or 7.
3 to 4 hours a day.
Yes. Like nothing isn't good. That's not going to get you anywhere, of course. Days off are okay, but you got to do something most of the time. 6 or 7 hours is too much. You get diminishing marginal returns. You get burned out. So I would say 3 to 4 budgeted well is a good amount if you have the time. And if your timeline typically is shorter. So I imagine most people on right now or watching this are going for the LSAT in less than 7 months. But in your case, you've got so much time that you can afford to go slower and deal with all your competing obligations like work, for example.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining. Hey, Ricky, what's up?
Thanks for having me. My concern is whether or not law schools would have need-based and merit-based scholarships given the COVID-19 situation for what is towards the end of the 2020 cycle. Because I planned on taking the June LSAT, but I've currently requested from LSAC to change my June LSAT to the May Flex, and I'm hoping that they can accommodate that. If not, then I'll just wait out for June. But I'm concerned that law schools may or may not have scholarship money for this cycle, given that it's a little late in the cycle.
Great question. I think that it may not necessarily change the scholarship situation that much. Their incentives are and always have been really to raise their medians, raise their rankings in the U.S. News Report. And so as a result of that, if your numbers are above their medians, they have reason to give you merit-based. Need-based is a totally different situation. Obviously, law schools aren't charities, but they may have reason to bring people in, not only for the numbers, but also for the softer factors. My experience and focus has been much more on the merit-based because that's what a lot of students can control by raising their numbers.
Right.
Need-based, I mean, that's FAFSA. That relates to more like to federal government loans and things of that nature. I'm not sure how much of that comes from law school specifically.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And as always, I think there's typically been more money available relatively earlier in the cycle. But if law schools have a hard time getting bodies and seats based on how things unfold this particular cycle, they may dig deeper into their pockets in order to fill their seats if it requires giving students some incentive to choose them. And then if they can get a good deal on a student, meaning that they're drafting you in a sense like in a sports league because your numbers can strengthen their pool of matriculating students.
Right. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All the best on the May LSAT to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's going on?
As you know, I signed up for your program today.
Awesome.
I'm taking the July LSAT. And I got the same email everybody else got. I didn't get anything on the webinar, but they do everything in the world to make sure this test goes off rather than waive it, right?
Yeah, of course. No, things have to turn ahead. You know, law schools need applicants. Applicants want to go to law school. LSAC's job is to match them together.
Here's an interesting story. I can't say what school it is because she said it. There was a dean of a law school back 12 years ago, and I told you about I was literally looking at law schools. And she said, between you and me, the LSAT has no bearing on the success of a law student. I have a girl in this class who I accepted last year with she said was low 140s, who's got a 4.0 average, and people who admitted in the high 150s, mid 160s are failing or barely making it. So it's an arbitrary test that the ABA decides that they're going to make it mandatory, and the schools have no choice but to use it.
I'm actually going to disagree with a couple of things that you said. Unsurprisingly, perhaps. I happen to think the LSAT's a pretty good exam. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect correlation, but it does have some demonstrated correlation with first-year law school grades. Are there exceptions? Of course. Is it perfect? No. But generally, there is some association. I would say that the LSAT does not necessarily indicate what kind of attorney you will be. Success in the legal field could be a totally different matter altogether. But there is an association with them. And then in contrast, you've got the GRE. So they're not required to use the LSAT. They could use any valid and reliable admission test based on the ABA rules. And so that's how the GRE has kind of gotten in the back door, which in my opinion, my reading of the data doesn't have quite as strong a correlation demonstrated with first year law school grades, but probably has some.
But the GRE, only very few schools are taking that.
Correct.
To be honest with you, you're the first one who's ever told me that there was a close enough correlation. Most people say there's really not much at all. But,
well, I can send you the links on it. There's data out there published by LSAC, of course. They have a reason to.
You have credibility with me. I signed up for your course, so
sure. I mean, but just if anyone's curious, Google LSAT predictive validity law school, and you'll see all the data on that. I mean, I'm not a statistician. I didn't major in any math-related stuff, but there is some data there on that. Okay. And if you think about it, the skills that the LSAT tests are related to what you're doing in law school: critical analysis, reasoning, deductive reasoning, navigating dense text. Emily's got a link in the chat here with something related to that on YouTube. So I would look into that for more. Anyway, Jeff, I'm curious, you're going for July. What questions do you have for me right now related to LSAT-Flex or anything else on your mind?
Well, I don't think, at least right now, Flex doesn't apply to me at this point because I'm only doing it for that one test. Like I told you earlier when we spoke on the phone, my goal is, 150 to 155 range. There's presently only 2 schools in my local area who are accepting the July LSAT for fall registration. Like you said, some of that may change. Right now, nobody's, fessing up to that at this point. And then some of the other schools that I like don't have a spring semester and only have a fall. So there are 2 schools that I'm going to, at least at this point, try to shoot for, with plan B being the spring.
Gotcha. I could say one thing about deadlines, which is that a lot of law schools will be taking results of both the June LSAT, if it happens, and then the July LSAT. People are very concerned about deadlines. Since the April LSAT was just canceled last night, law schools are going to be extending those deadlines if they haven't already, because their job is not to enforce these deadlines. Their job is to fill the seats. And so if they've got to move things back due to the LSAT not being able to go forward as expected in April or March, as just happened, both of those being canceled, they will extend those deadlines. And so July could be good for some folks to start law school a month later or in the spring. And there are pros and cons to applying earlier rather than later. In general, I would say applying earlier is better. But some folks would argue that this cycle, things are thrown out the window due to coronavirus. So I could see that too.
All right, thanks.
Amjad's asking, will fall 2020 law school start later than August, giving you until July 2020 to apply? So I have the feeling that a lot of law schools will be online in the fall, because based on my reading of the coronavirus situation, in person simply won't be possible if stay-at-home orders continue and if there are further waves of coronavirus. So if that's the case, then law school might be online in August, but I don't think they will delay the start of the semester because of it. Now, those of you considering starting law school this fall, you might not want to start online, and you might not want to pay the same amount for starting online versus in person. So that is something to consider. Some folks may want to wait a cycle in order to have a bit more certainty about what law school will be like. Alternatively, and I talked about this in the National Law Journal article I published in the Facebook group today, some folks will want to go to law school now, in part to wait out the ensuing recession we're kind of just starting to unfold. And so if you want to wait it out in law school for 3 years, that could be a reasonable course of action as well. As for the follow-up on giving you until July 2020 to apply to start law school this fall, that could be an option for you whether law school starts as scheduled or not this fall. Lots of law schools will be extending deadlines even to account for the July LSAT, and quite possibly even to account for the August LSAT, meaning you might start law school a week or 2 late if your August LSAT scores boost you up enough to the point where you would get in when you otherwise would not have. That's something to consider as well. Deadlines are fluid. They're not fixed. Law schools, again, they don't exist to enforce these deadlines. They want to get bodies in seats. They want to get tuition dollars. They have a massive overhead they have to maintain. And for that reason, they will bend and even break their previous statements, bend and break their previous deadlines in order to allow new folks to come in. And I've never really understood the idea of these deadlines being so early anyway. Why should the deadline be in February when law school's not starting for another 6 months? If they could have somebody else come along with a higher score, higher GPA, numbers that would raise their medians, why wouldn't they consider that applicant? They've got plenty of time to move them into the system and allow them to start. I don't really see the reason for it. Lindsay's asking, for someone who's taken the LSAT previously but not done well, would you do LSAT-Flex or regular LSAT? Well, we don't know when LSAT-Flex will be available again. We know that it's available now for the May LSAT, and my suspicion is that it will probably be available for the June LSAT as well if the June in-person is canceled, which I think it will be. And so I think more of it depends on your personal timing and when you're ready for the LSAT versus 3 sections at home versus 5 sections in person. I think for a lot of folks, if they have a quiet home environment, 3 sections at home is preferable because it's shorter, it's a smoother test day experience. On the flip side, though, the 75 questions you do count relatively more per question than when you're doing 4 scored sections. So that's one thing to consider. But lots of unknowns. We don't know how long the online LSAT-Flex will be available. LSAC is taking a wait and see approach, as they typically do. They're relatively conservative when making these sorts of decisions, and they're kind of waiting and seeing how things that play out with the coronavirus situation. So I don't even know that you're going to necessarily have both options. I think you'll have one option or the other for each administration as things unfold. As for the writing sample, that will still remain online. They're not going to bring that in person, whether you're doing LSAT-Flex at home online or digital LSAT tablet in person. You'll still be doing LSAT writing online at a separate point, at a separate time, either way. Emily was asking a follow-up that if you have a lost connection when you're setting up a game during the online LSAT, you can resume your work and catch up and pick up where you left off. LSAC side isn't clear on that. I suspect that if the connection's only lost for a couple of minutes, then or maybe less than a minute, you'd be able to resume. But I think if it's like a 10-minute break or a 20-minute break or glitch or issue, then they might need you to restart or retake the online LSAT at a later date. I can't imagine that if your internet drops off for an hour, that they would let you resume. But I suspect it's more for like a minute here, 3 minutes there. It's not clear. They haven't released the details on that, but I'm hoping that they will do so pretty soon, because that is an important question. I've been thinking about the potential issues around that as well. Will admissions look down on LSAT-Flex takers if they've already gotten an underwhelming in-person score? So let's say your in-person score was low, your LSAT-Flex score is higher. No, they won't look down on it. They will know you took the LSAT-Flex, in part because LSAC tells them, and also because of the month in this case. Like, nobody's taken the May LSAT in person. So if you took the May LSAT, they'll know it's online. Same goes if the June in-person LSAT is canceled and the June LSAT has to be online, they'll know. Is it a huge deal? Not really. Law schools are pretty confident in LSAC's ability to administer a valid and reliable admission test. They're fairly confident that a 75-question exam can be equivalent to or equated with a 100-question exam. Obviously, there are pros and cons to doing it a shorter LSAT at home potentially versus a longer one in person. But law schools, they want the number. They have incentive to care about the number because that's what goes to the ABA. That's what's factored into the U.S. News rankings as well. So I wouldn't worry about it. Just get the score. The number is what matters the most at the end of the day. Asking about LSAC charging LSAT cancellation fees. They've been really good about waiving fees for all these test date changes, which they really need to, because somebody who signed up for the April LSAT did not necessarily sign up to do the May online LSAT, and they might not be able to do the May online LSAT. So LSAC is waiving those fees for those particular situations, and they're not looking to keep your money for something that you didn't sign up for. So if you're waiting on a refund from them, be a little bit patient. They are inundated with emails and phone calls these days, but they will ultimately give you your money back. They're not looking to keep your fee for something that you did not sign up for. So don't worry too much about that. Will the LSAT-Flex be tougher questions? I don't think so. I don't see why it necessarily would be. They are looking to make this experience overall equal in difficulty to other administrations of the LSAT, whether digital LSAT tablet or the older and international paper and pencil LSAT. So if the online LSAT at home were such an easier experience of doing 3 sections, not 5, the comfort of your own home, that students performed significantly better, then would they have to include more difficult questions to account for that? Maybe, but I'm not entirely convinced that it would be that much easier for the average student that it would require including much more difficult questions. If anything, I think they would provide questions of equal difficulty roughly, and then they might adjust the raw score conversions a little bit, meaning you might need to get more questions correct to get a particular scaled score out of 180. But I'm honestly not sure there would be such a difference in performance to warrant that. And I would say, ultimately, this is not a content change. The difficulty of the questions should typically, I would expect, to be the same. It's only the delivery mechanism being slightly different. And you could argue the stress of the countdown timer on any digital online format could add another layer of stress, or being watched by a proctor either in person or through a webcam might add a little bit of stress. And I'm going to have some tea because I'm talking about stressful things. Do some practice runs if you can. I mean, take a practice test online with the official LSAT Prep Plus with a friend watching you on Skype on the other end if you want to simulate that a little bit to some extent. Or get a group together and do a Zoom call where you take practice tests together and watch each other, to have the feeling of not being alone in this process, and also to have the feeling that somebody might be watching you and holding you accountable. Another thing you could do that I've seen folks do on YouTube is do a study with me session where you live stream yourself in front of your desk on camera studying for the LSAT. And you don't have to have your face on camera if you're shy about that or don't want to display yourself, but you could have the camera stationed over your desk to simulate that experience just a little bit. Just some ideas related to that. People talking about doing it on iPad versus desktop. Again, LSAC has suggested that you're doing this on computer, on desktop or laptop, not on an iPad, which is, of course, somewhat ironic since the digital LSAT was on a tablet for the in-person administrations, and now that's no longer the case, with the online LSAT-Flex being on desktop. So the look and feel will be the same, but obviously on a computer, or laptop or desktop, you're not doing the whole touch screen thing. You'll be doing it on keyboard and mouse instead. As for how to study differently for Flex, LSAC will be releasing more on that in the near future. They're talking about giving more information by or on April 17th, which is next Friday, about a week and a half from now. So they should be sharing more on the details of it. But as for how to prep, I think the biggest thing is just do 3 sections back to back, no break. And that's it. Like I said, skip one of the logical reasonings, do the other 3 in that set, then score yourself, maybe double the logical reasoning part. Obviously, we're still waiting for an answer from LSAC about whether they'll be doing that. We'll see. I wish I had more information about that specifically. And yes, they are charging $200 for LSAT Flex. Yes, they're saving money on testing centers and proctors. At the same time, though, they have to pay ProctorU to handle the security. And they're getting tons of questions from applicants, at least right now, about the online LSAT Flex. And that's a labor cost in terms of the customer support associated. And I wouldn't be looking to LSAC to be reducing fees anytime soon. The trend line on what LSAC charges for anything has only gone in one direction as far as I've seen. So I wouldn't count on any pricing getting lower. But as Emily is saying, get a fee waiver, apply for a fee waiver. If you have or think you have financial need, you could save hundreds of dollars at the very least from getting that fee waiver. By the way, also apply for law school application fee waivers. That could save you a ton of money too. All you've got to do is ask. Just shoot them an email. They are no strangers to being asked for those fee waivers and could save you tons of money, especially if you're applying to tons of schools. Definitely worth doing. If you receive a fee waiver and cancel your LSAT test date, will it count towards the 2 that are waived? So if you postpone or withdraw your LSAT, that will not count towards the 2 that are waived. If you take the LSAT and cancel your score, that would count as a take, and that would count against your 2 LSAT administrations. So we got a question here around the score uncancellation option. So this is LSAC's way of allowing folks to uncover or reveal previously canceled LSAT scores. If you were registered for March or April LSAT specifically and did not have a previous LSAT score on record, LSAC gave you the option to uncancel and reveal your previously canceled score. And then if you liked the result of it, you could apply with that score. This is LSAC's way of really serving law schools, providing them with more applicants for those who might not have been able to take the May online LSAT, for example, and before that was even an option. And I don't see a ton of downside to exploring that if that applied to you. And if that applied to you, by the way, you got an email from LSAC informing you of this option. I don't see a downside for folks in that situation because if you uncover it and you like it, you can apply with it. If you uncover it and you don't like it, you don't have to use it. So this was another chance, like the July 2019 LSAT, where you could see your score, to choose to see your score before deciding whether to cancel it or keep it. Temporary thing. I don't expect them to offer that going forward for future LSAT administrations, but that was a nice option for students in that particular situation. It might not have been the most fair because it only applied to a certain particular set of students, not everybody, but good to have as an available option. I don't really see a downside to having that. This has been a lot of fun once again, folks. I want to thank you all for joining. I hope I was able to answer a lot of your questions around the online LSAT-Flex. I also have released a video earlier this afternoon discussing in depth. A YouTuber interviewed me about online LSAT-Flex, and I'll see if I could put that link for you all in the chat here if you want to check that out. I went to some more depth on all the different angles around that. I've actually got a whole LSAT coronavirus playlist at this point on the YouTube channel where I'm having discussions and interviews and such around coronavirus as it's impacting LSAT and law school admissions. So there's a link in the chat to YouTube if you want to check that out. And feel free to reach out, folks, if you have questions moving forward. I'm happy to address follow-ups via email and to do more sessions like this in the future. You've all been awesome. Stay safe, everyone. I'll have another sip of tea before signing off. And have a good night. Stay safe, keep the stress level low, and I'll see you all very soon. Good night. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.